Hey folks, this lesson is on models and simulations. We're going to be in section 4.1.3. We're not going to do too much from unit 4 here. We're basically going to stick to this section and maybe the one after it. So models and simulations. A model is a purposeful representation of a system. So most often using a computer, we're going to set up an environment with variables and objects that try to represent some real world um, idea or situation or community or whatever it is. Um, and then when you run a simulation, you're taking that model and putting it in a scenario, letting it run to generate data. So the model is the representation, and then the simulation is when you run that model to see what you think might happen. Okay, so I'm going to look at a couple of models and simulations just to give you some examples, and then I'll jump into the one that we'll be using for this lesson. One of my favorite models and simulations that I found a few years ago is this one that was generated, or not generated but written about by a website called Grantland a few years ago, and it's regarding basketball and how basketball had really come into an age of using a lot of advanced analytics and data. And there's this thing called Sport VU that can track player movement. And I really like this video. It shows it's a model of where offensive players are and then where the corresponding defensive players should be and where they actually are. So I think this video shows, so the blue players are the offensive players, the white values are um, where the actual defensive players were on that game or in that play, and then the little ghost ones is using their model where the players ideally would have been. So the coaches can go back and really break down with their players, like, oh, you should have slid more towards this shooter because they shoot a really high percentage from that spot. And so the model knows like the percentages of the people shoot around the arc and who we should be closer to and who we can slack off of. So that's how the sports world can use a model to simulate um, their own players so they can put in values for speed, lateral movement. Those of you that play games like the NFL games and the NBA games on PlayStation and whatnot, they all the players have those statistics like a speed associated with them, like this. Oh, this wide receiver has a 90 value of 90 for their speed. That's a model, and then when you play the game, you're simulating what would happen with that model. Another really I guess, popular model right now is modeling what's going to happen with our COVID-19 pandemic here. There's a website called 538 run by Nate Silver. Nate Silver is a statistician that became pretty well known in 2012, I think, or 2008 maybe, for correctly predicting how each state would vote for either Obama's first presidency or second presidency. Because he had made these models and run simulations for what he thought would, or what the model um, would show how the races came out for each state. So he has since developed this website called 538, and they have several models for what might happen from here on out with our COVID-19. So the model, they have to put in variables like what they think certain areas are going to do for social distancing. Are they wearing masks? Are they not wearing masks? Have businesses open or have they not? And so all these variables go into the model, and then it spits out different possible results for where we are headed. I would really encourage you to go to 538 and play around with some of those, see if you can understand. Um, what the graphs mean there. So that's just a couple examples of models and simulations. For this particular assignment, we are going to be modeling a biology example, specifically um, wolves and sheep living together and how much grass they have to feed on. For the assignment, you're going to be going to this Northwestern NetLogo website. NetLogo is a simulation programming language that Northwestern has used to make a whole bunch of simulations. So when you go to the website, you're going to search, you're going to use this drop-down search thing and type in wolf, sheep, and then the one you want is wolf, sheep, predation. And then you're going to be kind of messing around with the model and then running a simulation to generate data based off the model that you have set up. So things you get to control are how many sheep you start with, how many wolves you start with, how fast the grass grows, um, how quickly the sheep and the wolves gain weight from the food. There's a lot of variables that you get to control, and then you can control how quickly the model runs as well. So what's going to happen is each step, the wolves and the sheep are going to be eating. So the sheep eat the grass and the wolves eat the sheep. And obviously, if you have too many wolves to begin with, all the sheep are going to die out, and then the wolves will die out. And if you have grass that doesn't regrow fast enough, then the sheep will die out, and then the wolves will die out too. Um, so the goal, one of the goals is to really play around with it until you can kind of obtain some sort of stasis. Is that the right word? Stasis, where your stability, where the sheep and the wolves survive for a long period of time. So once you're ready, you click the setup button and it places your model out in a visual space here. And then to run the simulation, you click go and they run around and you'll see sheep disappear and they oh and of course there's a like a reproduction rate. So, if the sheep reproduce too quickly, they'll eat all the grass. Um, And then there's graphs that result, and you can see the population of the sheep rise and fall, and the wolves rise. So it looks like in mine here, the wolves have kind of overtaken the sheep. So a lot of the wolves died out, but now here come back the sheep. Look out. Unfortunately, one of my wolves survived, so it's going to be able to reproduce and make more wolves. And now my wolves are going to make a comeback because there's so many sheep to eat. But my sheet have really skyrocketed. I must have the grass turned off as far as being able to run out of grass. It looks like we have infinite grass here. Either that or the grass is reproducing or coming back so quickly that it's ridiculous. So my sheep population is really getting kind of out of control here, and there's quite a bit of lag. So you can hit setup again to get that to stop. Anyway, that's the model you're going to be messing around with, and you're going to answer some questions about it. So no coding really involved in this one. You can go look at the code down below here. Again, it's written in a language called Logo. It's a really old language that's associated with getting a turtle to move around the screen and draw. Um, syntax-wise, it's a lot different than languages that you've used before. But ultimately, if you wanted to make some changes and kind of mess around with this, you certainly could. All right, I will get your assignment posted. Seniors, this will be your last assignment um, that you'll have as you are done this week. Congratulations to you, seniors. Way to power through. You've done an awesome job of sticking with me here, and I have very much enjoyed our time together. And I'm so sorry that it had to end where we couldn't be meeting face to face. I would love for you to shoot me an email anytime. Let me know where you're headed next year, what your plans are, that kind of thing. I always love to hear from former students how they're doing. See you guys.